You saved her, the little girl's mother whispered through tears, gripping Dr. Ethan Calloway's hands as if he had pulled the whole world back from the edge. The hallway outside operating room 3 was too bright, too white, too full of people breathing again. Nurses leaned against the wall with tired smiles. A surgical resident wiped his eyes with the back of his sleeve. Somewhere behind the glass doors, an 8-year-old child was still alive because Ethan had stood under the lights for 11 hours and refused to give up. Everyone looked at him like he was a miracle. Ethan only nodded because that was what people expected from him. Calm. Controlled. The alpha doctor who never shook, never broke, never brought his own life into the hospital with him. His phone sat untouched in the locker room, sealed away with his street clothes, because emergencies did not wait for anniversaries, and dying children did not care about dinner reservations. At home, 15 miles across the city, Liam Harper had learned that lesson too well. He sat at their small kitchen table in the soft yellow glow of 2 candles that had burned almost to their silver holders. The soup had gone cold hours ago. The bread he had baked himself had hardened at the edges. A folded cream sweater covered his thin shoulders, the one Ethan once said made him look like winter sunlight. Beside Liam's plate sat a little folded note, written and rewritten until the paper had softened at the creases. He had imagined this night so many times. Ethan coming home exhausted, apologizing with that soft half-smile he only used in private. Liam pretending to be annoyed for maybe 5 seconds before pushing the truth across the table. Ethan staring. Ethan finally looking at him like nothing in the world, not the hospital, not the sirens, not the endless strangers calling his name, mattered more than the tiny life between them. But the apartment stayed silent. The phone screen beside Liam's elbow lit up once, just after 9. Emergency surgery. Wait for me, sweetheart. 4 words and a promise Ethan probably believed when he sent them. Liam had believed them too, once. He believed them through missed birthdays, reheated dinners, empty sides of the bed, and mornings when Ethan kissed his forehead while already reading a hospital alert. He believed them because Ethan was good. That was the cruelest part. Ethan was good to everyone. He remembered children's names after one visit. He bought coffee for interns too scared to speak. He stayed beside frightened patients until their breathing slowed. The whole city knew Dr. Ethan Calloway as the alpha who always came when someone needed him. Only Liam knew what it felt like to be the one person he kept asking to wait. Near midnight, Liam stood carefully, one hand resting over his still flat stomach. The candles flickered when he passed, making his shadow stretch long across the floor. He washed the dishes that had never been used. He wrapped the bread. He poured the soup down the sink, then stood there as steam rose around his face and disappeared. In the bedroom, he packed slowly. Not much. A few clothes. His sketchbook. A small appointment card folded into his wallet. He folded Ethan's clean shirts and placed them in the drawer, because even leaving him did not stop Liam from knowing he would forget where they were. Before dawn, Ethan unlocked the apartment door with shoulders heavy from saving a life. He expected dim light, cold food, Liam asleep on the couch pretending not to wait. Instead, the room was spotless. Too spotless. No kettle humming. No socked feet tucked under a blanket. No soft omega scent of vanilla tea and rain lingering by the hallway. On the kitchen table, Liam's silver ring waited beside the note. Ethan picked up the note first. The paper shook before he realized his hands were moving. You saved everyone who cried for you. I was the only one who learned to cry quietly. His breath left him in a sound no one at the hospital had ever heard. Then he noticed the small clinic receipt tucked beneath the ring, and the words prenatal appointment stared back at him like a tiny, silent heartbeat he had already missed. Ethan stood in the kitchen with the clinic receipt in one hand and Liam's ring in the other, and for the first time in years, the apartment felt larger than the hospital. At St. Mercy he knew what every sound meant. A monitor alarm. A hurried step. A family holding its breath. Here, there was only the refrigerator humming and the rain tapping softly against the window, and he did not know what to do with either one. He read the note again, then a third time, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something less final. They did not. His thumb brushed the small printed words on the receipt, and shame rose so fast in his throat that he had to set it down before he damaged it. Liam had been trying to tell him something. Liam had needed him. And Ethan had answered with 4 words he had sent too many times to count. Wait for me, sweetheart. He moved through the apartment like a stranger searching someone else's life. On the counter was a mug with a tea bag dried to the bottom, peppermint, the kind Liam used when nausea made food impossible. Ethan opened the refrigerator and found 3 covered bowls stacked neatly on the middle shelf, each labeled in Liam's careful handwriting. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Under the labels were smaller notes, practical and gentle even in abandonment. Heat for 2 minutes. Add salt. Do not skip dinner. Ethan closed the door too hard, then flinched at the sound. In the hallway, Liam's rain boots were gone. His blue scarf was gone. The sketchbook he carried everywhere was gone. But Ethan's white coats had been washed and hung by the door, sleeves smooth, pockets emptied of old receipts and broken pens. That nearly undid him. Liam had left like someone cleaning up after a guest. Like someone who believed his absence should not inconvenience the man who had caused it. Ethan found the calendar near the pantry. Their 5th anniversary was circled in blue. Below it, in pencil, Liam had written, "Tell Ethan about the baby?" The words had been erased, then rewritten, then erased again so many times the paper was thin. On 2 other dates, the same question appeared, smaller each time. Tell him tonight? Maybe after his shift. He pressed his palm flat against the wall, suddenly unable to stand straight. He had thought silence meant peace. He had mistaken Liam's softness for strength without limits. His phone rang just after 6 in the morning. Mara Harper's name appeared on the screen, and Ethan answered too quickly. For one terrible second, either of them spoke. Then Mara said, "Do not ask where he is." Her voice was low, exhausted, and sharper because she was trying not to cry. Ethan shut his eyes. "Is he safe?" Safe is a generous word. A drawer opened on her end, then closed. "He is with me for now. I am taking him to Vermont once the doctor clears him." Ethan swallowed. "Mara, I did not know. That is not the defense you think it is." The sentence landed quietly, which made it worse. He looked toward the bedroom, where Liam's side of the closet stood half empty. "I need to see him." "No. You need to understand why he left before you try to make yourself feel better by showing up." Ethan gripped the phone until his knuckles paled. His alpha instincts pushed at him, restless and frightened, demanding he go, find, fix. But there was nothing in Mara's voice that allowed him to pretend he still had that right. "He called you last week," she said. "At 2 in the morning. He had a fever and could barely stand. He told me not to bother you because you were on trauma rotation." Ethan remembered that night. He had slept 4 hours in the on-call room and woken to a text from Liam that said, "Hope your shift is okay." He had answered with a thumbs-up emoji because he was already walking into rounds. The memory burned. Mara exhaled shakily. "He used to sleep on the left side of the bed because it was closer to the hallway. He said he liked hearing your key in the door before you came in. Did you know that?" Ethan did not answer. He could not. Mara understood anyway. "There is an envelope in the drawer under the coffee table. Read it. Then decide whether you still think this happened overnight." The call ended. Ethan walked to the living room with legs that felt unsteady beneath him. In the drawer, beneath a stack of old takeout menus and Liam's colored pencils, he found a cream envelope from a clinic he did not recognize. His name was not on it. Liam had never shown it to him. Inside were test results, appointment notes, and one phrase highlighted in yellow, "Early. Signs of bond exhaustion due to prolonged emotional distress." At the bottom of the page, Liam had written a single question in the margin, so small Ethan almost missed it. "Can a bond die before the people do?" The clinic report stayed open on the coffee table long after the sun came up, but Ethan could no longer read it. The highlighted words blurred until they became something older than medicine, older than regret. Prolonged emotional distress. He had spent half his life diagnosing pain in strangers, and somehow he had lived beside Liam's without naming it. The first time Ethan met him, Liam had been sitting in the pediatric waiting room at St. Mercy with a little girl asleep against his shoulder, and a melted ice pop dripping onto his jeans. She was not his daughter. Ethan learned that later. She was the child of Liam's neighbor, rushed in after a playground accident because her mother was working a double shift. Liam had followed the ambulance in a borrowed car, pale and breathless, carrying a backpack full of crayons, snacks, and 2 mismatched stuffed animals. Ethan remembered stepping into the room, already wearing his hospital face, cool and efficient, the one that made nurses straighten and parents stop panicking. "Family only," he had said. Liam had looked up at him with rain-gray eyes and a stubborn lift to his chin. "Then pretend I am family until her mother gets here." It should have annoyed Ethan. Instead, he noticed the child's untied sneaker first, the way Liam kept glancing at it as if one loose lace could become another disaster. Without thinking, Ethan crouched in front of the chair and tied the small shoe himself. Liam went very still. "You did not have to do that," he said. Ethan stood, smoothing his coat. "Someone was going to trip." It was the kind of answer that sounded cold to anyone listening. Liam smiled anyway, soft and surprised, as if he had heard the gentleness Ethan had tried to hide inside practicality. That was how it began. Not with fireworks. With a shoelace. With peppermint tea from the vending machine because Liam's hands were shaking. With Ethan walking him to the parking garage after midnight, saying nothing when Liam's old sedan refused to start, then silently calling a tow truck and standing between him and the winter wind. In public, Ethan was almost impossible to read. At the hospital, he spoke in clipped sentences, gave orders without raising his voice, and moved through chaos like a man carved from ice. But Liam learned the private language beneath it. A fresh coffee left beside his sketchbook meant, "You look tired." A blanket placed over his knees meant, "I noticed the window was open." 2 fingers resting briefly at the back of Liam's wrist meant, "I am here, even if I do not know how to say it." For a while, that was enough. More than enough. Liam fell in love with the quiet version of Ethan, the one who bought extra blueberry muffins because Liam always said he was not hungry, and then ate half of one in tiny bites. The one who read picture books aloud in a flat, serious voice when Liam was testing illustrations for work, making him laugh so hard he covered his face with both hands. The one who came home after terrible shifts and stood in the doorway until Liam opened his arms first, as if asking permission to be human. Then the promotion came. Chief of Emergency Surgery. More responsibility. More calls. More people needing Dr. Calloway before Ethan could remember he was also someone's home. At first, Liam was proud. He ironed Ethan's shirts the morning of the announcement, and kissed his shoulder in the kitchen while toast burned behind them. "You deserve this," Liam whispered. Ethan believed him. He also believed they were strong enough to survive anything. The first missed dinner became a joke. The second became an apology. The 10th became normal. One rainy Thursday, Liam arrived at the hospital with a lunch bag because Ethan had not eaten since dawn. He found him in a supply room barely wider than a closet, one hand braced against a shelf, eyes closed, his white coat hanging open like armor he could no longer carry. Liam stepped inside and shut the door softly. For one breath, they were alone in a narrow space, surrounded by gauze, gloves, and the sharp smell of antiseptic. Ethan opened his eyes, and all his coldness vanished. "You should not be here," he said. But his hand had already reached for Liam's sleeve, thumb brushing the place where a bond pulse should have felt warm and steady. Liam misunderstood the words before he understood the touch. His smile faltered. "Right. I just brought food." Ethan saw it too late, the small retreat in Liam's face. He wanted to explain that he meant the hospital was too full of stress, too full of alpha pheromones and alarms, not that Liam was unwanted. But a code was called overhead. The old reflex took him. He squeezed Liam's wrist once and left the supply room at a run. Behind him, Liam stood holding a lunch bag that would never be opened, listening to the hallway swallow the man who loved him only when the world gave him permission to stay. The day Liam finally understood what had been hurting him was not the day Ethan forgot their anniversary. It was not even the day he came home at 3 in the morning, smelling like disinfectant and hospital coffee, and whispered an apology into Liam's hair without knowing what he was apologizing for. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late October, the kind of gray Boston day that made every window look tired. Liam had gone to St. Mercy with the little blue gift box in his coat pocket, its ribbon slightly crushed from how often he had held it. He told himself he would not be dramatic. He would find Ethan, tell him about the baby, watch the truth land between them, and maybe, for once, something in Ethan's world would stop. The front desk nurse recognized him and gave him a sympathetic smile that made Liam's stomach tighten. Sympathy from hospital staff was never a good sign. "He is between cases," she said, lowering her voice. "Try the west discharge entrance. He has a patient leaving." Liam thanked her and walked that way, one hand pressed over the pocket where the ultrasound waited. He found Ethan near the automatic doors with a young Omega patient wrapped in a thin hospital blanket. The patient looked barely out of college, pale with fear, one hand gripping a paper bag of medication like it might float away. Ethan stood close enough to shield him from the cold draft each time the doors opened. His expression was calm, his voice low and steady. "You are safe," Ethan said. "Your ride is 5 minutes out. I am not leaving until they get here." Liam stopped behind a vending machine full of chips and candy bars, hidden by the bright red side panel and a poster about flu shots. For one absurd second, he noticed the machine still had the brand of peanut butter crackers Ethan pretended to hate but always stole from Liam's bag. The thought almost made him laugh. Almost. Then Ethan removed his own scarf and wrapped it around the patient's shoulders. It was not romantic. It was not wrong. It was exactly what a good doctor should do. That was why it hurt so badly. Liam watched the patient look up at Ethan with relief, watched Ethan soften in that private way Liam had not seen in weeks, and something inside him went quiet. Not angry. Not jealous in the sharp, ugly way he would have been ashamed of. Just tired. Deeply, completely tired. Because Ethan still knew how to stay when someone was frightened. He still knew how to make his voice gentle. He still knew how to give warmth without being asked twice. He had simply stopped doing it at home. Ethan glanced up then, as if the bond had tugged at him from across the hall. Their eyes met over the vending machine. Liam saw recognition, surprise, then something like guilt cross Ethan's face. He stepped forward. "Liam?" The Omega patient followed Ethan's gaze, and Liam saw the misunderstanding bloom instantly, awkward and helpless. Liam lifted one hand in a small wave, because apparently even heartbreak had manners. "Hi," he said, and hated how normal he sounded. Ethan looked from Liam to the patient, then back again. "This is not what it looks like." The words landed before he could soften them. Liam's fingers curled around the gift box in his pocket. He had not thought it looked like anything until Ethan said that. A fragile silence opened between them, filled with rolling carts, distant elevator bells, and an announcement about parking validation. Somewhere nearby, a child complained that the hospital pudding tasted like sadness, and the child's father whispered, "Buddy, all pudding does." Liam almost smiled again, because the world was cruel enough to keep being ordinary. Ethan took another step toward him, but the patient swayed slightly, and Ethan turned at once, catching his elbow with careful professionalism. There it was. The choice, made so quickly it was almost invisible. Liam knew Ethan would have done the same for anyone. That was the problem. "I came to tell you something," Liam said quietly. Ethan's face changed. "Tell me now." For the first time in a long while, Liam heard urgency meant for him. But a trauma alert sounded overhead, sharp and immediate. Ethan froze. The old war passed across his features. Duty against love, strangers against home, the whole world against one quiet Omega with a crushed blue box in his pocket. Liam saved him from choosing. He stepped back. "Go," he said. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Wait for me. Please." 10 minutes. Liam looked at him for a long moment, memorizing the tired blue of his eyes, the scarf missing from his neck, the way his hands shook only when no one else would notice. Then he smiled, small and unbearably gentle. "I always do." Ethan ran toward the alarm. Liam stood still until he disappeared around the corner. Only then did he take the gift box from his pocket, smooth the ribbon with his thumb, and place it on the nearest empty chair. By the time Ethan came back 11 minutes later, the chair was still there. The box was still there. But Liam was gone. For 11 minutes, Ethan was exactly who everyone needed him to be. He moved through the trauma bay with steady hands, a clear voice, and the kind of calm that made younger doctors breathe easier just by standing near him. He did not think about the empty chair. He did not think about the blue box. He did not think about the way Liam had said "I always do," as if those 3 words had years packed inside them. There was a patient in front of him, and Ethan's entire life had taught him that love could wait when someone was dying. His father had taught him that without ever saying it directly. Dr. Malcolm Calloway had missed Christmas mornings, school concerts, birthdays with grocery store cakes and candles Ethan's mother had to relight because the first round burned down before he got home. People in their town called Malcolm a hero. They sent cards. They dropped off casseroles. They stopped Ethan in supermarkets and said, "Your dad saved my brother." Or, "Your dad gave us 6 more months with Mom." Ethan learned to smile politely while holding a carton of milk that was getting warm in his hands. He learned that heroes belonged to everyone, and families received whatever pieces were left. He had hated that lesson as a boy. Then he grew up and became fluent in it. When the trauma bay finally settled, Ethan stripped off his gloves and walked back toward the west entrance with a strange, careful hope. 10 minutes had become 11. 11 was not unforgivable. Not yet. Liam would be annoyed. Liam would make that quiet face, the one where he said everything was fine while reorganizing the spice rack with terrifying precision. Ethan would apologize. He would mean it. He would open the box, whatever it was, and this time he would listen. But the chair beside the vending machine was empty. The blue box sat alone under the fluorescent light, small and bright and abandoned. Ethan picked it up with fingers that suddenly felt useless. Inside, the ultrasound photo lay on top of the pregnancy test like a secret too heavy for paper. For a moment, the hallway sounds dimmed, the squeak of sneakers, the elevator chime, a nurse laughing tiredly at the front desk. All of it moved around him while he stood still. Liam had come to tell him he was going to be a father. Ethan had asked him to wait. Again. His phone buzzed in his coat pocket, and he nearly dropped the box reaching for it. 7 missed calls from Liam. 1 voicemail. Then a call from Noah Bennett. Ethan answered before the first ring finished. "Where is he?" There was a pause on the other end, full of hospital noise and something worse. "Ethan," Noah said, and the use of his first name felt like a warning. "Liam is in observation." Ethan turned so fast an intern stepped out of his way. "What happened?" "He was at the bus station. He had severe cramping and almost fainted. He called you first." Ethan closed his eyes. The hallway tilted, not enough for anyone else to notice, just enough for him to understand that the ground had never been as solid as he believed. "I was scrubbed in." "I know." Noah's voice stayed even, but not kind. "I answered when he tried the hospital line. He asked me not to tell you until your case was done." That was Liam. Even scared. Even alone. Still protecting Ethan's work from becoming Ethan's guilt. "Is the baby?" Ethan could barely finish. "Stable for now. Liam is exhausted. Dehydrated. His bond markers are low." Noah exhaled, and in the silence after it, Ethan heard all the things his friend was choosing not to say at work. Then Noah said them anyway. "Your Omega almost lost the baby while you were being thanked for saving someone else's." Ethan found Liam behind a half-closed curtain in a quiet observation room, pale against the pillow, one hand curled around the unfinished cream scarf he had been knitting for Ethan since September. Mara sat beside him, her eyes red, her jaw tight. She did not yell. She only looked at Ethan the way people look at a door that failed to lock during a storm. Liam stirred before Ethan could speak. His lashes lifted, slow and heavy. For one breath, Ethan saw the man who used to wait up with soup and sleepy smiles. Then Liam focused on him, and his first words were not accusation, not anger, not even his own fear. "Did the little girl make it?" Ethan stood there with the blue box pressed to his chest, and something in him finally broke quietly enough that only Liam could see it. The answer should have been simple. Yes, the little girl made it. Yes, the surgery went well. Yes, the strangers in the hallway were crying with relief because Ethan had done everything right for them. But looking at Liam in that narrow hospital bed, Ethan could not make the words feel like good news. "She survived," he said softly. Liam closed his eyes, and the smallest smile touched his mouth. It was not joy exactly. More like peace borrowed from someone else's life. Good, he whispered. Her mom looked scared. Mara made a sound under her breath and stood so quickly the chair legs scraped against the floor. That is what you are worried about. Liam opened his eyes again, tired but calm. Mara. Just her name, gentle and warning. She looked away, blinking hard, and busied herself folding the thin hospital blanket at the foot of the bed. Ethan stepped closer, but not too close. He knew the rules of a patient room. Ask before touching. Keep your voice low. Do not crowd someone who cannot leave. Somehow, he had never thought to bring those rules home. Liam, I am sorry. The words came out rough, smaller than the damage they were meant to reach. I am so sorry. I should have answered. I should have seen it. I should have seen you. Liam stared at the ceiling tile above him, where someone had taped a tiny paper star, probably left from a pediatric patient. I know you are sorry. That was all. Not forgiveness. Not rejection. Something colder because it was honest. A nurse pulled the curtain aside before Ethan could answer. She glanced at him, then at Liam, then hesitated with the awkward caution of someone who had already heard too much from the hallway. Mr. Harper, your discharge papers will be ready in about 20 minutes. Dr. Bennett said your sister can drive you. Thank you, Liam said. Ethan turned sharply. Discharge? He needs monitoring. The nurse stiffened. Liam's fingers tightened around the scarf. Mara's eyes flashed. From the doorway, Noah's voice cut in, quiet but firm. He needs rest, hydration, follow-up care, and less stress. He does not need an alpha argument at his bedside. Ethan looked at Noah, and for a second, the room remembered who Ethan was at St. Mercy. Chief of Emergency Surgery. The man residents lowered their voices around. The alpha everyone trusted when things went wrong. But Noah did not lower his eyes, and Liam did not look impressed. That hurt more than Ethan expected. It meant his title had no power in the one room where he needed mercy most. I am not arguing, Ethan said. Then do not start, Mara replied. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking as she tucked Liam's sketchbook into a canvas tote. On the cover, Ethan saw a drawing he had never seen before, a tiny nursery window, yellow curtains, a mobile of paper clouds. Liam must have been imagining a home while Ethan was sleeping in on-call rooms and calling it sacrifice. The curtain moved. Again. 2 nurses passed outside, whispering before they noticed Ethan standing there. One of them stopped mid-sentence, but not before he heard enough. Poor thing. Came in alone. His alpha works here, right? Heat crawled up Ethan's neck. Not anger. Shame. Hospital gossip usually rolled off him like rain. Now every word felt deserved. Liam heard it too. His face did not change, and somehow that was worse. He had become practiced at being humiliated quietly. Ethan took one more step. Come home with me tonight. Please. I will take leave. I will change my schedule. I will do anything. Liam finally looked at him. His eyes were dry, which made them seem older. You do not have to stop saving people, Ethan. His voice was soft enough that everyone else fell silent to hear it. I never wanted that. I just wanted to stop disappearing every time someone else needed to be seen. Ethan knelt beside the bed before pride could stop him. Not like a doctor checking vitals. Not like an alpha claiming space. Just a man who had run out of height to fall from. He rested his forehead near Liam's hand but did not touch until Liam allowed it. After a long moment, Liam's fingers moved into his hair, gentle from habit, heartbreaking because it still felt like love. Ethan closed his eyes. For 3 breaths, the room was almost the old apartment. Rain. Peppermint tea. Liam smoothing his hair after a long shift. Then Liam withdrew his hand. Mara is taking me to Vermont, he said. Ethan lifted his head. For how long? Liam looked down at the unfinished scarf in his lap. I do not know. Mara zipped the tote. Noah turned toward the door, giving them privacy without leaving. Liam slipped the silver ring from the bedside table and placed it in Ethan's palm beside the blue box. You can hear about the baby through Mara. But please do not come after me just because guilt is finally louder than your pager. Ethan's fingers closed around the ring. Outside the room, another family began thanking a doctor in grateful, trembling voices. For once, no one was thanking him. For once, the person he loved was leaving through a side exit, and Ethan had no emergency to blame for being too late. For 3 months, Ethan learned that regret did not arrive like a storm. It arrived like dust. Quietly. Everywhere. On the untouched side of the bed. On the second coffee mug he still washed every morning before remembering no one had used it. On the cream scarf Liam had left unfinished, folded in the top drawer like a sentence that stopped halfway through. He did not go to Vermont. Not once. Every alpha instinct in him wanted to drive north, knock on Mara's door, and beg until Liam either forgave him or hated him out loud. But Liam had asked for distance, and for the first time, Ethan treated something Liam said as more important than what Ethan felt. So he stayed away. He changed his schedule. He gave up the overnight shifts other surgeons called noble and his therapist called hiding. He learned how to sit in silence without checking his phone every 30 seconds. On Tuesdays, he mailed a letter to Mara's address. Not love letters. Not excuses. Just small truths Liam could choose to read or burn. I ate dinner at the table tonight. I did not take a call during it. I finally understood why you hated lilies. I am sorry it took me 4 years to ask. Most weeks, there was no reply. Once, Mara mailed back a sticky note with 3 words. He read one. Ethan kept it in his wallet behind Liam's ultrasound photo. At work, the rumors softened but never vanished. People watched him differently now, especially when Omega patients came through the emergency doors. He was still skilled, still calm, still the doctor families prayed would walk in. But now, when he wrapped a blanket around someone's shoulders or lowered his voice to reassure a frightened patient, he felt the echo of Liam standing behind that vending machine, learning he was not the only person Ethan could be gentle for. One evening, after a 12-hour shift that felt mercifully short compared to who he used to be, Ethan found his mother waiting outside his apartment with a paper grocery bag in her arms. Evelyn Calloway had white hair cut neatly at her chin and the tired eyes of a woman who had loved a good man badly trained by the world. She stepped inside, looked at the empty kitchen, and set the bag on the counter. I brought soup, she said. You look like someone who forgot humans require food. Ethan almost smiled. Liam used to say that. I know. Evelyn took off her gloves slowly. He called me last winter when you had the flu and refused to come home. Asked how to make the broth your father used to like. Ethan looked away. He had never known that. His mother moved to the table and touched the blue box, still sitting there because Ethan could not bring himself to put it away. Your father saved a lot of people, she said. At his funeral, strangers filled 3 rooms. They told me stories I had never heard. Beautiful stories. Her voice did not break. That made it sharper. Then I went home to a house where I could not remember the last meal we ate together without him leaving early. Ethan sat down across from her. The room felt small around his shame. I thought being needed meant I was doing something right. Evelyn's eyes softened with grief, not comfort. Being needed is easy for men like you. Being present is harder. The words went in clean and deep. Ethan reached into his pocket and took out Liam's ring. He carried it everywhere now, not as a claim, but as evidence. His mother looked at it for a long moment. Do you want him back? She asked. Or do you want the pain to stop? Ethan closed his hand around the ring. The answer came quietly. I want him to feel safe, even if it is not with me. Evelyn nodded once, as if that was the first honest thing he had said. The next morning, Mara called before sunrise. Ethan answered on the second ring, heart already racing, but he said nothing. He had learned not to fill silence just because it scared him. Mara's voice was tight. Wind roared on her end of the line. There is a storm in Vermont. The clinic lost power. Liam went into labor early. Ethan stood in the dark kitchen, Liam's ring still warm in his palm, while snow began to fall against the Boston window like the world had gone suddenly white. Before leaving, Ethan saw the unfinished text on his phone. I am coming. He deleted it. Liam had not asked for a promise. He needed help, not another sentence to wait for. Ethan drove north before the city had fully woken, but he did not drive like a man chasing forgiveness. He drove like a man who had finally understood that love was not proven by arriving loudly. It was proven by arriving correctly. The highway out of Boston turned white mile by mile, salt trucks crawling ahead with flashing amber lights, windshield wipers beating a frantic rhythm against snow that seemed determined to erase the road. Mara called twice with updates, each one shorter than the last. Liam was early. The clinic was running on backup power. The local doctor was competent but exhausted. The baby's heartbeat was steady, then uncertain, then steady again. Ethan kept both hands on the wheel and forced himself to breathe the way he taught panicked families to breathe. In for 4. Hold. Out for 6. It did not make him calmer. It only kept him from falling apart. Somewhere near the New Hampshire border, he passed a rest stop where families huddled under yellow lights with paper cups of coffee, waiting for the storm to decide their plans for them. Ethan almost laughed at the cruelty of it. For years, weather, traffic, emergencies, hospital alarms, all of it had been reason enough to make Liam wait. Now the whole sky had turned against him, and he had no right to ask Liam to hold on for even one more minute. When he finally reached the small Vermont clinic, his coat was stiff with snow and his fingers were numb from gripping the wheel. The building looked nothing like St. Mercy. No marble lobby. No wall of donor names. Just a low brick clinic with a crooked wreath on the front door, half the parking lot buried under drifts, and one flickering sign that read urgent care in tired blue letters. Inside, the waiting room smelled like wet wool, coffee, and old radiator heat. A toddler slept across 2 chairs under a puffy purple jacket. An elderly man argued softly with the vending machine, insisting it had taken his dollar in a tone usually reserved for major betrayal. Under any other circumstance, Liam would have smiled at that. The thought hit Ethan so sharply he had to stop near the door. Mara appeared from the hallway, her braid loose, her face pale with worry. For 1 second, she looked like she might tell him to leave. Ethan would have. He had decided that in the car. If Liam did not want him there, he would shovel the clinic steps, fix the generator, sit in the parking lot until someone told him the baby was safe. But Mara only looked him up and down and said, "Do not make this about you." Ethan nodded. "I will not. Do not touch him unless he asks." "I know." Her mouth tightened, as if she had expected the old Ethan to argue and did not know what to do with this one. She led him down a narrow hall where the lights dimmed every few seconds. Behind a closed door, Liam's voice broke through, low and strained, and Ethan's entire body moved toward it before he stopped himself. Mara noticed. "He is scared," she said quietly. "And he is angry that your scent still makes him feel safer." That sentence did more damage than blame could have. Ethan stared at the closed door. "Does he know I am here?" "Yes." "What did he say?" Mara looked away. "He said you should not have driven in this storm." Of course he had. Even now, Liam was worried about Ethan arriving hurt more than Ethan arriving late. A nurse hurried past carrying a battery lantern, and the hallway went dark for one full breath before the backup lights buzzed weakly back to life. From inside the room, the doctor called for another lamp. Ethan took off his coat and handed it to Mara. "What do they need?" "Power. Warmth. Steady hands." Ethan looked at the room, then at the supply closet across the hall. "I can give them 2 out of 3. For the next hour, he did not stand beside Liam's bed. He did not announce himself as a surgeon from St. Mercy. He found extra blankets in storage. He helped the nurse move a portable heater closer to the door without overloading the circuit. When a window latch would not hold against the wind, he wedged his folded scarf into the gap to stop the icy draft. It was ridiculous, almost embarrassingly small, a world-famous doctor fighting a Vermont window with a scarf, but it mattered. The room grew warmer. Liam's breathing steadied. Then the door opened. The nurse looked at Ethan. "He is asking for you." Ethan stepped inside slowly. Liam lay pale against the pillows, damp curls clinging to his forehead, one hand gripping the sheet. His eyes found Ethan's, guarded and terrified and bright with pain. Ethan stopped just inside the door. "I am here," he said. "Only if you want me to be." Liam's mouth trembled. For a moment, he looked like the man at the kitchen table with a blue box and too much hope. Then he reached out one shaking hand. Do not tell me to wait. Ethan crossed the room and took his hand as gently as if it were something sacred. Never again. Outside, the storm pressed hard against the glass. Inside, the lights flickered once, twice, and Ethan lifted the battery lamp with his free hand, holding it above Liam until his shoulder began to shake. He did not lower it. He did not look away. And when the first small cry finally filled the room, Ethan felt Liam's fingers loosen in his hand just before his eyes fluttered closed from exhaustion. Liam woke the next morning to a room full of winter light and quiet machines. For a few seconds, he did not remember the storm, the clinic, or Ethan's hand holding his while the world outside disappeared under snow. Then a soft sound came from the clear bassinet beside him, small and impatient, and everything inside Liam moved toward it. His son was wrapped in a blue blanket with tiny white clouds on it, his face red and wrinkled and perfect in the unreasonable way newborns were perfect. Oliver Harper, the nurse, had written on the card, because Liam had chosen his own last name first. Ethan was not in the room. That should have hurt. Instead, it let Liam breathe. Mara told him later that Ethan had slept sitting upright in the hallway, boots still wet, coat folded under his head, because Liam had not invited him inside after the delivery. When the nurses tried to wake him and offer a cot, he had only asked if Liam and the baby were stable, then closed his eyes again outside the door like a guard who finally understood he was not owed entry. On the third afternoon, Liam asked to see him. Ethan came in freshly shaved but exhausted, holding his hands at his sides as if afraid they might reach for something without permission. The old Ethan would have filled the silence with plans. Pediatric appointments. Housing. Legal paperwork. Ways to fix the future before anyone could ask whether it wanted to be fixed. This Ethan only stood near the chair and said, "He is beautiful." Liam looked down at Oliver. "He is loud." Ethan's mouth softened. "That is fair. He has strong opinions." It was such a small joke, so careful and human, that Liam almost smiled. Almost. Ethan saw it and did not chase it. That mattered. For a while, they listened to Oliver breathe. Then Liam reached into the drawer beside the bed and took out the cream scarf, the unfinished one Ethan had carried from Boston without knowing Mara had packed it. The needles were still tucked through the last row. "I was making this for you," Liam said. Ethan looked at it like it could wound him. "I know. I am not finishing it." His voice stayed gentle. That was important. This was not punishment. This was truth. "I need to finish other things first. My degree. My illustrations. Learning how to be his father without teaching him that love means waiting by a window." Ethan nodded once, but his eyes shone. "You should." Liam placed the scarf in Ethan's hands. "Keep it unfinished." Ethan understood. The thing between them was not repaired. It was not thrown away either. It was simply no longer something Liam would complete by himself. Weeks passed before Ethan moved to Vermont. Not into Liam's house. Not even onto his street. He rented a small apartment above a hardware store 12 minutes away and arranged part-time coverage at the county clinic 3 days a week. On the other days, he drove to Boston for surgeries and came back when he said he would. Sometimes Liam let him hold Oliver. Sometimes he did not. Sometimes they spoke easily over grocery bags and diaper boxes. Sometimes Liam closed the door after 5 minutes because healing had limits, and Ethan finally respected a closed door without making it a tragedy. Spring came slowly. Snow thinned along the roads. The clinic wreath came down. Oliver learned to grab Ethan's finger with astonishing force, and Ethan learned that a baby could humble a surgeon faster than any operating room. One evening, Liam found him on the porch repairing the little wind chime the storm had bent. It was not impressive work. No one would thank him for it. His sleeves were rolled up, a smear of dust on his cheek, Oliver asleep against his shoulder in a carrier, warm and safe. Ethan looked up but did not stand. "I can leave if you want quiet." Liam watched him for a long moment. The man before him had once belonged to every emergency except the one at home. Now he was sitting in fading sunlight, fixing something small simply because it mattered to Liam. The ache was still there. Love was still there too, but softer now, no longer a chain around his own throat. Liam opened the door wider. "Dinner is getting cold," he said. Ethan rose slowly, careful not to wake the baby, and stopped at the threshold. He waited, not because Liam had to ask him in, but because permission had become part of how he loved. Liam stepped aside. It was not a promise of forever. It was not a return to who they had been. It was one warm meal, one open door, one evening where no one had to sit alone. Ethan crossed the threshold quietly, carrying their sleeping son, and for the first time, he did not arrive as a hero. He arrived as someone who had learned to stay after the world stopped applauding.